The morning coffee tasted bitter in David Torres's mouth as he reviewed the day's agenda. 47 years since humanity joined the Galactic Federation, and they still treated humans like children asking permission to sit at the adult table. Today would be worse than usual. He could feel it in his bones. The Galactic Council chambers buzzed with the usual mix of languages, clicks, and telepathic whispers. Representatives from 300 species filled the massive hall, but David noticed how they naturally formed clusters. The ancient races sat in the front rows, their seats ornate and comfortable. Species like his own were pushed toward the back, their simple chairs a constant reminder of their place in the pecking order. Ambassador Krill of the Thrakari clicked his mandibles in what passed for laughter as David entered. The beetle-like creature's black eyes gleamed with amusement. "Look, the little human diplomat arrives. How charming that they send the same one each time. Do they only have one who can count high enough to understand galactic law?" Several species joined in the laughter. David forced his face to remain neutral. Getting angry would only prove their point about human emotional instability. High Chancellor Forth called the session to order. The ancient Altarian's crystalline form caught the light as he spoke. His species had ruled half the galaxy for 10,000 years, and he never let anyone forget it. Today's main topic was resource allocation in the Outer Rim territories. The human colonies of New Terra, Pioneer's Rest, and Haven's Gate have been flagged for reassignment, Forth announced without ceremony. These worlds would be better served under more experienced stewardship. David shot to his feet. Those colonies have been human settlements for over 20 years. The people there have built entire civilizations. You cannot simply... Cannot? Forth's voice carried the weight of millennia. Young human, your species has held interstellar territory for less than a standard lifetime. The Altarian Empire has maintained stable governance for longer than your entire recorded history. We know what is best. The colonies are thriving under human management, David insisted. Agricultural output is up 30%. Trade routes have expanded. Crime rates are at historic lows. What possible justification? Krill interrupted with another series of clicks. Justification? Your people fight wars over skin color and imaginary sky beings. You poison your own atmosphere for profit. You create weapons designed specifically to cause maximum suffering. And you ask for justification when your betters offer to clean up your messes. The chamber erupted in agreement. Species David had never even spoken to nodded along with the insults. It struck him how readily they accepted these characterizations without ever bothering to learn the truth about humanity. Furthermore, Vorth continued once the noise died down, Earth's military technology continues to lag dangerously behind galactic standards. Your ships use primitive fusion drives when the rest of us achieved antimatter propulsion centuries ago. Your weapons systems are barely adequate for defending against pirates, let alone contributing to galactic security. Ambassador Lith of the Aquatic Reef People spoke up. Perhaps if the humans spent less time on their violent entertainment and more time studying the sciences their elders have perfected, they might achieve basic competency. More laughter. David noticed that not everyone was joining in, but those who remained silent were mostly smaller species with little political power. The ones who mattered, the ones whose votes would decide his people's fate, seemed to find humanity's struggles hilarious. Earth has contributed significant resources to the Federation. David tried again. Our agricultural exports feed 17 systems. Our mineral extraction operations supply raw materials for manual labor. Forth cut him off. Appropriate work for a species at your development level. No one questions humanity's ability to dig holes or grow food. We question your capacity for the subtle art of governance. The vote was called. David watched the display as the tally climbed. 212 in favor of reassignment. 37 opposed. 41 abstentions. His people's homes, their dreams, their futures, decided by creatures who had never bothered to visit a human world. The motion carries, Vorth announced. The 3 colonies will be transferred to Altarian administrative control within 1 standard year. The human populations may remain as workers under proper supervision, or relocate to other human territories. As workers, David repeated, You mean as slaves? The chamber fell silent. Vorth's crystalline features seemed to brighten with anger. Mind your tone, human. The Alterian Empire does not practice slavery. We offer employment opportunities to less developed species. The fact that you cannot distinguish between opportunity and oppression demonstrates exactly why your people require guidance. Krill clicked his mandibles again. Perhaps the human should be grateful. His primitive people are being offered the chance to learn from their betters. Instead of whining about imaginary injustices, he should thank the Chancellor for his generosity. Grateful, David said quietly. You want us to be grateful? Yes, Vorth said, his voice taking on a lecturing tone. Gratitude is appropriate when children receive gifts from their elders. Humanity was a backward, war-torn world when we discovered you. We brought you peace, technology, medicine, art, philosophy. We lifted you from your muddy little planet and showed you the wonders of the galaxy. A little appreciation would be refreshing. David looked around the chamber one more time, at the faces filled with condescension and amusement, at the few sympathetic expressions from species too weak to matter, at the casual cruelty of beings who had convinced themselves that their age made them wise and their power made them right. He stood slowly, gathering his papers with deliberate care. The chamber watched him with mild curiosity. Humans were known for their dramatic exits. It was another sign of their emotional immaturity. I need to make a call to Earth, David said. Vorth waved dismissively. The session is adjourned. The human may file his report with his superiors. Perhaps they will see reason where their representative cannot. David walked out without another word. Behind him, he heard Krill telling jokes about human pride and Vorth planning the grand ceremony that would mark the liberation of the human colonies. In his private quarters, David activated the quantum communicator. The encryption was military grade, a precaution that had seemed paranoid when Earth's intelligence services insisted on it. Now he understood their foresight. The connection took several minutes to establish. When President Santos appeared on the screen, her expression told him she already knew what he was going to say. That bad? She asked. Worse than we feared, David replied. Maria, they're not just taking our colonies. They're taking our dignity, our right to exist as equals. They want us to smile and thank them for the privilege of being their servants. Santos nodded grimly. Admiral Stone has been preparing for this possibility. How much time do we have? 1 standard year for the colonies, but that's not the real deadline. They'll keep taking pieces until there's nothing left of human independence. The next vote might be about Earth itself. Recommendation? David took a deep breath. Withdraw from all galactic treaties. Cut all diplomatic ties. It's time to show. Then what happens when you mistake patience for weakness? Santos was quiet for a long moment. You're sure? Once we take this step, there's no going back. David thought about Krill's laughter, about Vorth's condescending lectures, about the casual way 3 human worlds had been handed over to strangers, who saw his people as nothing more than useful animals. I'm sure, he said. They want to treat us like children? Fine. But children grow up. And when they do, they stop asking permission and start making their own rules. The emergency session of Earth's Defense Council met in the deepest levels of Luna Station, far from prying eyes and alien surveillance equipment. Admiral Rebecca Stone had called the meeting for 0300 hours, knowing that most galactic species would be in their rest cycles. Every detail mattered now. Around the holographic conference table, Earth's military and civilian leadership gathered in person or through secure quantum links. The weight of the decision ahead pressed down on everyone present. They were about to burn bridges that had taken 50 years to build. The President has authorized Operation Clean Slate, Stone announced without preamble. As of this moment, humanity is withdrawing from all galactic treaties, trade agreements, and diplomatic relationships. We have 72 hours to make it happen. General Patricia Knox leaned forward in her chair. The logistics alone are already in motion, Stone interrupted. Every human diplomat has received their recall orders. Our trade vessels are returning to port as we speak. And yes, Patricia, that includes the military assets you're worried about. The hologram shifted to display Earth's far-flung empire. Red markers indicated human colonies, trade stations, and military bases scattered across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Blue lines showed the web of relationships that connected humanity to 300 other species. In 72 hours, all of those blue lines would be severed. What about the colonies that voted for reassignment? Asked Secretary Williams. New Terra, Pioneer's Rest, Haven's Gate. The Council expects us to hand them over in 11 months. Stone's smile was cold. The Council can expect whatever they want. Those are human worlds, built by human hands, inhabited by human families. They stay human. Dr. Cross, head of research and development, raised her hand. Rebecca, I need clarification on the technology transfers. Are we really pulling out all the alien tech? All of it, Stone confirmed. Every Alterian FTL drive gets removed and returned. Every Thrakari communication relay gets shut down. Every piece of so-called advanced technology gets boxed up and shipped back to its makers. The room erupted in protests. Secretary Williams looked horrified. That's economic suicide. Our entire infrastructure depends on those systems. Transportation, communication, medical equipment will be replaced with human alternatives within 6 months, Stone said calmly. What alternatives? Williams demanded. We don't have FTL technology without Alterian drives. We can't communicate across interstellar distances without Thrakari relays. You're talking about sending us back to the Stone Age. Dr. Cross cleared her throat. Actually, we do have alternatives. The room fell silent. Cross stood, activating a new set of holograms. These showed technical specifications that looked nothing like the familiar alien technologies everyone knew. For the past 15 years, Earth's Black projects have been developing independent solutions to every major technological challenge, Cross explained. The Prometheus drive can achieve faster-than-light travel without antimatter. The Hermes communication network uses quantum entanglement instead of traditional relays. The Asclepius medical system surpasses anything in current galactic use. Why haven't we heard of any of this? Knox asked. Because it wasn't ready, Cross replied. And because we knew this day might come. Every time the Council dismissed our primitive technology, every time they laughed at our backward science, our researchers took it personally. They've been working overtime to prove the aliens wrong. Stone nodded approvingly. Show them the performance comparisons. The hologram changed again. Side-by-side charts showed human technology outperforming galactic standards in every category. The Prometheus drive was faster than Alterian antimatter systems. Hermes communications had better range than Thrakari relays. Asclepius medical scanners could detect problems that galactic equipment missed entirely. How is this possible? Williams whispered. Simple, Cross said. The galaxy stopped innovating. They achieved faster-than-light travel 10,000 years ago and decided that was good enough. They created interstellar communication 5,000 years ago and called it perfect. They've been coasting on ancient achievements while calling themselves advanced. Meanwhile, Stone added, humanity has been innovating for less than a century of interstellar presence. We're not burdened by 10 millennia of, this is how things are done. We see problems differently. We find solutions they never considered. The withdrawal began immediately. Human diplomats packed their bags and left alien worlds without explanation. Trade ships powered down their Alterian drives and limped home on backup fusion engines. Military vessels dismantled their borrowed weapon systems and replaced them with human alternatives that most aliens had never seen before. The galaxy's initial reaction was confusion. Ambassador Krill contacted several other human diplomats, only to be told they no longer had authorization to negotiate on behalf of Earth. High Chancellor Vorth sent increasingly demanding messages to President Santos, all of which were returned, unopened, with a simple note. Humanity does not recognize galactic authority over human affairs. By the end of the first day, confusion turned to concern. The Alterian Trade Federation discovered that 40% of their agricultural imports came from human worlds. The Thrakari Manufacturing Consortium realized they had been dependent on human-mined rare earth elements for their advanced electronics. Dozens of species found their economies suddenly missing crucial components they had taken for granted. By the end of the second day, concern turned to alarm. Human colonies were not just refusing to hand over their worlds to alien administrators. They were actively expelling all alien presence. Altarian trade stations were politely but firmly asked to leave. Thrakari communication hubs were disconnected and their staff given passage home. Species that had maintained small settlements on human worlds for decades suddenly found their leases terminated. "You cannot do this," Forth transmitted to President Santos on the third day. These agreements were ratified by the Galactic Council. They have the force of interstellar law. Santos's reply was brief. Humanity withdraws its recognition of the Galactic Council's authority. Your laws no longer apply to us. This is rebellion, Forth insisted. The Council will not tolerate the transmission cutoff. Santos had simply ended the call. By the end of the 72-hour deadline, the transformation was complete. Humanity had effectively vanished from galactic civilization overnight. Their diplomats were gone. Their trade ships had disappeared. Their colonies had become isolated islands, cut off from the rest of the galaxy. The Council's emergency session was chaos. Species that had relied on human goods found themselves facing shortages. Trade routes that had operated for decades were suddenly unusable without human way station support. The economic disruption was spreading faster than anyone had predicted. "This is temporary," Forth declared to the assembled representatives. "Humanity is having a tantrum. When their primitive technology fails and their isolated colonies start struggling, they will come back begging for readmission. We simply need to wait them out." Krill clicked his mandibles nervously. "What if they don't come back?" "They will," Forth said with confidence. "They need us more than we need them. Without galactic technology, without our trade networks, without our guidance, they will collapse within a year. Mark my words, the humans will return humbled and grateful for our forgiveness." But deep in his crystalline core, Vorth felt a flicker of uncertainty. The humans had seemed very calm for people committing economic suicide. Almost as if they knew something he didn't. In her office on Luna Station, Admiral Stone reviewed the final reports. Every piece of alien technology had been removed and returned. Every diplomatic tie had been severed. Every economic relationship had been terminated. Humanity now stood alone among the stars, exactly as they had planned. "Phase 1 complete," she told her staff. "Begin Phase 2. It's time to show the galaxy what humans can really do when nobody is holding them back." Dr. Emma Cross had always been told she thought too much. As a child, her teachers said she asked too many questions. As a student, her professors warned her about chasing impossible theories. As a researcher, her colleagues suggested she focus on practical applications instead of wild dreams. Now, standing in the control room of humanity's most secret facility, she finally understood why thinking too much was exactly what the galaxy needed. The Independence Project had been her baby for 12 years. Hidden beneath the surface of Titan, shielded from alien sensors by Saturn's radiation, the facility had been developing technologies that galactic science declared impossible. Not difficult, not impractical, impossible. "Status report," Cross called out to her team. "Prometheus drive systems are operating at 112% of designed efficiency," reported Dr. Kim from the propulsion lab. "We're actually exceeding our own projections." "Hermes' network is stable across all tested ranges," added Dr. Petrov from communications. "We're getting clean signals from the Proxima Centauri relay with zero lag time. Asclepius medical scanners are detecting cellular abnormalities that galactic equipment missed in 70% of test cases," Dr. Singh announced from the medical. Cross nodded, but her attention was focused on the main display. It showed a real-time map of human space, dotted with colonies that had been thriving since the withdrawal 6 months ago. Every world was now equipped with human technology, exclusively. Every ship flew using human drives. Every communication passed through human networks. The galaxy had been watching and waiting for the inevitable collapse. Instead, they were witnessing something that challenged everything they thought they knew about technological development. Incoming. Priority transmission, the communications officer announced. It's from New Terra. Commander Rivers wants to speak with you directly. Cross accepted the transmission. Commander Sam Rivers appeared on screen, his weathered face grinning with barely contained excitement. Behind him she could see the bridge of the HMS Defiance, humanity's newest class of warship. Emma, you need to see this, Rivers said without preamble. The Alterians sent a fleet to investigate our primitive colony. 12 heavy cruisers, full battle formation. They're demanding we surrender the planet for immediate inspection. Cross felt her heart rate spike. Sam, the Defiance is just a prototype. You can't engage 12 cruisers alone. Rivers' grin widened. Watch me. The transmission switched to external cameras, showing the space around New Terra. The Alterian fleet hung in formation, their crystalline ships gleaming against the starfield. Each vessel was twice the size of the Defiance, armed with weapons that could crack planets and protected by shields that had never been breached in galactic warfare. This is Admiral Zenth of the Alterian Imperial Navy. Came a transmission on all frequencies. Human vessel, you are ordered to surrender immediately. Your illegal occupation of this system ends now. Rivers' response was transmitted on the same frequency. This is Commander Rivers of the Human Defense Force. You are in violation of human territorial space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The Alterian Admiral's laughter was crystalline and sharp. Consequences. One primitive vessel against the might of the Alterian fleet? Human, your delusions would be amusing if they were not so pathetic. Last warning, Rivers said calmly. Leave now. Open fire, Zenth ordered. Disable their engines. We will drag them back to stand trial for their insolence. What happened next redefined everything the galaxy thought they knew about space combat. The Alterian fleet fired first, their plasma cannons unleashing enough energy to boil oceans. The beams struck the Defiance and simply stopped, absorbed by defensive systems that shouldn't exist. Meanwhile, the human ship didn't return fire with weapons. Instead, it transmitted something. 12 Alterian cruisers, each a masterpiece of 10,000-year-old engineering, went dark simultaneously. Their engines stopped, their weapons powered down, their shields collapsed. Life support remained active, but every other system simply shut off. What did you do to our ships? Zenth demanded, his voice carrying panic for the first time in his 1,000-year career. I asked them nicely to take a nap, Rivers replied. Your computers are very polite. They listen when someone knows how to talk to them properly. Cross realized she was holding her breath. The Prometheus drive had been impressive. The Hermes network had been revolutionary. But this was something else entirely. This was warfare reimagined from the ground up. Human technology doesn't rely on brute force, Rivers continued, his voice broadcasting to both the disabled fleet and any listeners in the galaxy. We don't try to overpower our enemies. We understand them. Your ships run on the same basic principles they've used for millennia. Very sophisticated, very powerful, very predictable. He paused, letting that sink in. Our computers spent 6 months learning everything about your technology, from the equipment you forced us to use. Every circuit, every protocol, every security system. We know your tech better than you do because we actually study things instead of just inheriting them. The disabled Alterian ships hung helpless in space. Their crews were unharmed but utterly powerless, trapped inside vessels that no longer responded to their commands. This is impossible, Zenth whispered. No species has ever developed technology capable of learning, Rivers interrupted, of adapting, of innovation. You're right, Admiral. No galactic species has done that in thousands of years. That's why you're sitting in dead ships while I'm offering you safe passage home. Cross watched the scanner readings with professional fascination. The Defiance's computers had essentially performed technological surgery on 12 alien warships. shutting down offensive and defensive systems while leaving life support and communication active. It was precision beyond anything in galactic military doctrine. How? Xanth asked. Because you never bothered to secure your systems against threats that didn't exist yet, Rivers explained patiently. Your ancestors built amazing ships, Admiral. But they built them to fight other galactic species using galactic technology. They never imagined someone might approach the problem differently. Dr. Cross activated her own transmission, adding her voice to the conversation. Admiral, your people called our technology primitive because it didn't look like yours. You assumed that different meant inferior. That was your first mistake. The main display showed sensor readings from across human space. Similar encounters were happening near other colonies as alien species sent investigative fleets to probe human defenses. Each probe met the same fate, complete electronic shutdown followed by polite requests to leave. Your second mistake, Cross continued, was assuming that a species needs thousands of years to develop advanced technology. Humans have been in space for less than a century. We're not limited by ancient assumptions about how things should work. Every problem is new to us, so we find new solutions. She gestured to her team, who were monitoring dozens of similar encounters across human space. Your people have been using the same basic technologies for 10,000 years. Plasma, weapons, energy shields, antimatter drives. Very impressive, very reliable, very stagnant. Our weapons don't use any of those principles. Our defenses work on completely different assumptions. Our ships move through space in ways your sensors aren't designed to detect. This is madness, Xanth said. The Galactic Council will never tolerate such dangerous innovations. You will be stopped. Rivers' voice carried a note of genuine curiosity. Stopped by whom? Ships that can't move? Weapons that won't fire? Computers that obey us instead of you? The Alterian admiral fell silent. Around him, his crew worked frantically to regain control of their vessel, but nothing responded. They were technologically advanced cavemen trying to operate equipment that required an understanding they no longer possessed. I'm sending coordinates for the nearest human way station, Rivers announced. You'll find supplies, repairs for your life support systems, and safe passage back to Alterian space. Consider it a gesture of goodwill from one military officer to another. Why? Xanth asked. Why help us after we threatened your world? Because we're not like the Council species, Rivers replied. We don't crush people just because we can. We defend ourselves when threatened, but we don't seek revenge against the ignorant. Your people made assumptions about humanity based on limited information. That's a mistake, not a crime. Cross smiled as she watched the disabled Alterian fleet begin their humiliating journey home. News of this encounter would spread across the galaxy within days. The species who had dismissed humanity as primitive would learn that primitiveness and innovation were not the same thing. Phase 3 begins now, she announced to her team. It's time to show the galaxy what happens when you give innovative minds unlimited resources and complete freedom to experiment. The display updated to show new projects coming online across human space. Weapons that could disable entire fleets without violence. Defenses that made ships effectively invulnerable. Propulsion systems that could cross the galaxy in days instead of months. For thousands of years, the galaxy had been ruled by species who inherited their power from ancient achievements. Now they faced newcomers who created power through relentless innovation. The old order was about to discover just how dangerous fresh thinking could be. The mining platform floated like a metal cancer above the crystal seas of Prism World, its industrial tentacles reaching deep into the ocean to harvest the rare minerals that made faster-than-light communication possible. For 600 years, the Gleaming Ones had watched their homeworld being slowly devoured by Thrakari corporations, while their people worked as unpaid laborers in the processing facilities. General Patricia Knox studied the tactical display from her command ship, the HMS Justice. Intelligence reports painted a grim picture of systematic exploitation disguised as economic development. The Gleaming Ones were crystal-based life forms whose bodies naturally processed the very minerals the Thrakari needed. Instead of fair trade agreements, the corporations had simply declared the entire species to be living mining equipment. General, we're receiving distress signals from the surface, reported Lieutenant Davis from the communication station. The Gleaming Ones are requesting immediate assistance. Apparently, the Thrakari overseers have increased production quotas again. Several workers have shattered from exhaustion. Nox felt the familiar anger that had driven her through dozens of liberation missions over the past year. Every world they visited revealed new depths of casual cruelty perpetrated by species who considered themselves civilized. How many corporate security ships are we facing? She asked. 23 vessels in orbital defense formation, replied her tactical officer. Mix of heavy cruisers and patrol boats. Standard Thrakari military configuration. And how many innocent beings are suffering down there while we debate tactics? Estimated population of 4 million Gleaming Ones, General. All of them technically classified as corporate property under Galactic Council regulations. Nox had heard enough. Begin approach. Signal the Thrakari fleet that they have 10 minutes to evacuate their personnel from the surface before we begin liberation operations. The response came immediately. Unknown human vessels, you are trespassing in Thrakari corporate space. Withdraw immediately or face military action. This is General Nox of the Human Liberation Fleet, she replied calmly. We're here to discuss the immediate release of 4 million enslaved beings. You have 9 minutes to begin evacuation procedures. The Thrakari commander's laughter was a series of harsh clicks. General, you face 23 warships with a force of only 7 vessels. Your mathematics are as primitive as your understanding of galactic law. The Gleaming Ones are legitimate corporate assets, purchased and developed according to proper legal procedures. Nox smiled coldly. Commander, you're thinking about this all wrong. I don't need to defeat 23 ships, I just need to convince 23 computer systems to take a nap. She nodded to her communications officer. Execute silence protocol. The Thrakari fleet went dark so quickly that their commander didn't have time to finish his next sentence. 23 warships, representing centuries of military engineering, became expensive pieces of space debris in less than 30 seconds. What happened to our ships? Came a panicked transmission from the surface. All systems are down. We've lost contact with the fleet. Your systems are fine, Nox replied. They're just not taking orders from you anymore. Corporate security vessels, you now have safe passage to the nearest human way station. Surface facilities, you have 1 hour to evacuate all Thrakari personnel before we begin atmospheric operations. The liberation of Prism World followed the pattern Nox had perfected over the past year. Human engineers descended to neutralize the industrial equipment that was poisoning the crystal seas. Medical teams treated Gleaming Ones who had been worked to the point of structural failure. Most importantly, diplomats began the delicate process of explaining concepts like wages, working hours, and the right to refuse dangerous assignments. Crystal Singer, the eldest of the Gleaming Ones, approached Nox with movements that chimed like wind through glass sculptures. The ancient being's body showed stress fractures from centuries of forced labor, but his mental clarity remained sharp. Human General, we do not understand. Why do your people risk war with the powerful Thrakari to help us? What do you gain from our freedom? Nox knelt beside the crystalline elder, her voice gentle. Crystal Singer, humanity learned something important during our first 50 years in galactic space. We learned that a civilization is judged not by how it treats its strongest members, but by how it protects its most vulnerable ones. But the Thrakari have laws, contracts. The Galactic Council approved our status as corporate assets. How can you simply declare these agreements void? Because some laws are wrong, Nox replied simply. Some contracts are signed under duress. Some agreements are just slavery with fancy paperwork. My people have a saying, just following orders is not a defense for participating in evil. The crystalline being's light patterns shifted to configurations Nox's translator couldn't interpret. She suspected they represented concepts for which humans had no equivalent words. The Thrakari will not accept this loss quietly, Crystal Singer warned. They will bring greater fleets. They will petition the Galactic Council for military support. They will declare war on your alliance before allowing their profits to be threatened. Let them, Nox said. Crystal Singer, Do you know how many species have joined the Independent Alliance in the past year? She activated a holographic display showing the rapidly expanding network of Alliance worlds. 47 species have abandoned the Galactic Council system entirely. Another 130 are providing covert support while maintaining official neutrality. Every liberation mission brings us new allies who remember what it feels like to be powerless. The elder studied the display with ancient eyes. So, many worlds choosing freedom over security. The Council must be furious. The Council is terrified, Knox corrected. For 10,000 years, they've maintained order through a simple system. The strong rule, the weak serve. Everyone accepts their place. Now they're watching that system collapse as species discover they have alternatives. A priority transmission interrupted their conversation. Knox's communications officer looked troubled as he delivered the news. General, we're receiving reports from across the sector. Thrakari corporate fleets are mobilizing in unprecedented numbers. Intelligence estimates over 300 warships converging on Alliance space. Knox felt a moment of genuine concern. 300 ships represented a significant threat, even with humanity's technological advantages. Then she looked at Crystal Singer and the hundreds of other gleaming ones who were experiencing freedom for the first time in their lives. "Patch me through to Admiral Stone at Fleet Command," she ordered. Stone's image appeared on the main screen. Moments later. "Patricia, I assume you've heard about the Thrakari mobilization. It's the largest corporate military action in galactic history." "Rebecca, are you worried?" Knox asked. Stone's smile was predatory. "I'm excited. For a year, we've been liberating one world at a time, fighting small corporate security forces. This gives us the chance to demonstrate what happens when slave-owning species commit their full military might against people who refuse to tolerate oppression." "Orders? Continue liberation operations. Every species we free is a potential ally, and every ally makes the next liberation easier. The Thrakari want a war? Let them have one. But it's going to be fought on our terms, not theirs." Knox turned back to Crystal Singer. "Elder, I need to ask something important. When the Thrakari fleet arrives with 300 warships demanding, 'Your people return to bondage,' what will you tell them?" The ancient being's crystalline form chimed with harmonics that needed no translation. They were the sound of absolute determination. "We will tell them that the gleaming ones choose freedom," he said. "And if they attempt to take that freedom, by force they will discover that beings who have nothing left to lose fight harder than beings who have everything to protect." Knox nodded approvingly. "Crystal Singer, welcome to the Alliance. I think you're going to fit right in." As her fleet prepared to depart for their next liberation mission, Knox reflected on how much the galaxy had changed. A year ago, species like the Gleaming Ones had accepted their fate because they saw no alternatives. Now they were choosing to fight rather than submit because they had learned that freedom was possible. The old galactic order had maintained stability through hopelessness. The Alliance was creating something new through hope itself. And sometimes Knox realized hope was the most powerful weapon in the galaxy. President Maria Santos had dreamed of this moment for 3 years, but she never expected it to feel so surreal. The Grand Assembly Hall on Unity Station buzzed with conversations in over 200 languages, representing species that had been enemies for centuries now working together as equals. The Independent Species Alliance had grown from a desperate rebellion into something the galaxy had never seen before. A true democracy of worlds. Santos walked through the massive hall, greeting representatives who would have been unthinkable allies just 5 years ago. Elder Coral of the Reef People shared technical specifications with Engineer Buzz of the former slave species known as the Diggers. Dr. Whisper, a gaseous drift singer, collaborated with solid matter beings through specialized communication devices. Former enemies sat side by side, united by their shared commitment to dignity and mutual respect. "It's remarkable, isn't it?" came a familiar voice behind her. Santos turned to see David Torres, now Secretary General of the Alliance, approaching with a datapad in his hands. The same man who had once endured humiliation in the Galactic Council chambers now oversaw an organization that had fundamentally changed the balance of power in the galaxy. "Sometimes I can't believe it worked," Santos admitted. "When we voted to withdraw from galactic civilization, Half of Earth's population thought we were committing suicide. Instead, we gave birth to something new, Torres replied. Maria, you need to see the latest application numbers. He handed her the datapad. Santos's eyes widened as she scrolled through the data. 47 new species in the last month alone? David, we're going to run out of room for representatives at this rate. It's not just the numbers, Torres said. Look at who's applying. Santos studied the list more carefully. Her breath caught as she recognized several names. The Centaurian, Republic? They were founding members of the Galactic Council, the Silicon Collective. They've been allied with the Alterians for 3,000 years. Word spreads fast when you demonstrate that the old way isn't the only way, Torres observed. These species are tired of hierarchies based on age rather than merit. They want to be part of something that values innovation over tradition. The Grand Assembly was called to order by a gentle harmonic tone that resonated across all audible frequencies. Santos took her position at the central podium, looking out at the sea of diverse beings who had chosen cooperation over domination. Fellow representatives, she began, her words automatically translated into hundreds of languages. Today marks the 3rd anniversary of the Alliance. 3 years ago, humanity stood alone against galactic prejudice. Today we gather as 312 equal species, united in our commitment to justice, innovation, and mutual respect. The applause that followed combined clapping, clicking, harmonics, and bioluminescent displays in a symphony of approval that would have been impossible under the old system where only certain species were allowed to express opinions. But our work is far from finished, Santos continued. Today we face perhaps our greatest challenge yet. The remnants of the old Galactic Council have requested admission to our alliance. The hall fell silent. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. After 3 years of watching their empire crumble as species defected to the alliance, the ancient powers that had once ruled the galaxy were asking to join the organization they had once dismissed as a primitive rebellion. Representatives from the Alterian Empire, the Thrakari Federation, and 17 other former council species have submitted formal applications, Santos announced. As required by our charter, their applications will be reviewed by the full assembly. But before we begin that process, their representatives have asked permission to address us directly. Santos stepped aside as High Chancellor Vorth entered the hall. The ancient Alterian moved slowly, his crystalline form somehow dimmed since the last time Santos had seen him. Behind him walked Ambassador Krill and other representatives of species that had once looked down on humanity with condescension and contempt. Vorth approached the central podium with visible reluctance. For a being who had commanded galaxies, asking for admission to an organization founded by primitive humans was the ultimate humiliation. But the alternative was continuing to watch his empire fragment as more species abandoned the Council for the Alliance. Esteemed representatives, Vorth began, his voice lacking its former authority. I come before you today not as a chancellor demanding obedience, but as a petitioner seeking membership in your alliance. The irony was lost on no one. 3 years ago, this same being had lectured humanity about gratitude and proper respect for their elders. Now he was asking those same humans for the privilege of joining their organization. The Alterian Empire acknowledges that our former approach to galactic governance was flawed, Vorth continued. We mistook age for wisdom, power for righteousness, and tradition for truth. We failed to recognize that true advancement comes not from maintaining ancient systems, but from embracing new ideas and treating all sentient beings with dignity. Santos watched the assembled representatives carefully. Some species still bore scars from Alterian oppression. Others had lost worlds to Thrakari expansion. The desire for revenge was understandable, but the alliance had been founded on principles that transcended the failures of the past. Ambassador Krill stepped forward next. The Thrakari Federation formally apologizes for 8 centuries of enslaving the Reef People, the Diggers, and 47 other species. We cannot undo the past, but we pledge to dedicate our resources to making amends and ensuring such injustices never occur again. Elder Coral rose from his position among the Alliance representatives. His bioluminescent patterns were carefully neutral as he addressed his former oppressors. Ambassador Krill, words are easy. Your people held mine in bondage for 800 years. How can we trust that you have truly changed? Krill's mandibles clicked nervously. Elder, I ask not for trust, but for the opportunity to earn it. The Thrakari Federation has already begun dismantling our forced labor operations and providing reparations to affected species. We seek Alliance membership not to escape consequences for our past actions, but to be held accountable to standards higher than we held ourselves to. The debate that followed lasted 7 hours. Representatives shared stories of oppression and liberation, of ancient grudges and newfound hopes. Some argued that the former council species should face punishment before being offered membership. Others contended that the Alliance's strength lay in its capacity for redemption and growth. Finally, President Santos returned to the podium. The decision before us will define what kind of organization we choose to be. We can exclude these species and maintain the cycle of division that has plagued the galaxy for millennia. Or we can demonstrate that our principles are strong enough to transform even our former enemies into allies. She paused, letting the weight of the moment settle over the assembly. The Alliance Charter requires that all applicant species demonstrate 3 commitments: respect for the dignity of all sentient beings, dedication to technological and social progress, and willingness to contribute to the common good rather than seeking dominance over others. The question before us is whether the former council species have truly embraced these principles. The vote was conducted in the Alliance's traditional manner. Each species cast a single ballot, regardless of their size, population, or military power. Democracy meant equality, not just for individuals, but for entire civilizations. The tally was close. 187 in favor of admission, 125 opposed. The former council species would be welcomed into the Alliance, but with strict conditions. They would serve a probationary period during which their actions would be monitored closely. They would contribute significant resources to reparations, programs for species they had oppressed. Most importantly, they would be held to the same standards as every other Alliance member. As the session concluded, Santos found herself approached by a familiar figure. Vorth stood before her, his ancient pride visibly struggling with his current circumstances. President Santos, he said formally. The Altarian Empire is grateful for this opportunity. I must ask, though, how can you forgive what we did to your people? How can you welcome those who treated you as inferiors? Santos considered the question carefully. Chancellor, we're not forgiving you because we've forgotten the past. We're offering you membership because we believe in the possibility of change. You called us primitive, but perhaps our real strength was never in our technology. Perhaps it was in our refusal to let the failures of others define our own character. She gestured toward the bustling hall where former enemies were already beginning to collaborate on joint projects. The old galaxy was built on the idea that might makes right, that the strong should rule the weak. The Alliance is built on the idea that strength comes from cooperation, that wisdom can emerge from any species, and that justice matters more than tradition. Vorth nodded slowly. Your species has taught the galaxy something we thought we already knew but had forgotten, that true advancement requires not just technological progress but moral progress as well. No, Santos corrected gently. Our species learned that from watching the galaxy's mistakes. The question now is whether we can all learn to do better together. As the representatives dispersed to begin the work of integration, Santos reflected on how far they had all come. 3 years ago, humanity had withdrawn from a galaxy that saw them as children. Today, they led an alliance of equals working toward a future none of them could have imagined alone. The moment humans stopped tolerating insults had become the moment the galaxy learned to show respect. And in that respect, they had found something far more valuable than the dominance that had defined galactic civilization for millennia. They had found partnership, progress, and hope for a future where strength served justice rather than the other way around. Outside Unity Station's viewports, ships from hundreds of species worked together to build humanity's greatest achievement, Not a weapon or a technology, but a civilization where being different was valued instead of punished, where new ideas were celebrated instead of feared, and where every sentient being had the chance to reach their full potential. The galaxy had finally grown up.